Cool. Hey everyone. Well, today we are very excited to restart the EMEA AgTech Exchange webinar series in 2022. And I'm really excited for all of you to get a chance to meet and hear from Taita, who is the CEO and founder of Synnefa. And I'm going to pass this over to Taita in just a minute once I do the general introduction. But this is some contact information if anybody wants to reach out to either myself as the working group lead for the EMEA AgTech working group, or to Taita himself as well if they're more curious to follow up at the end of the webinar. A few things, just housekeeping things at the beginning, as we always do. We've updated, and we also will be discussing in more detail, so there is more time for feedback, the priorities for the EMEA AgTech working group in 2022. We used to have we had about 5 or 6 priorities in the past. We're trying to trim that down to be a little bit more focused, and we really are welcoming participation from other EMEA members. And that's what we'll talk about after the presentation from Synnefa today. But the 2 primary priorities for 2022 are going to be to continue this webinar series, to build this awareness and these opportunities for partnerships. And then also to design, research, and launch a new product, essentially, from EMEA called the AgTech Roadmap for Pharma Organizations. And so there'll be some more detailed discussions on that in the 30-minute EMEA working group internal meeting after the public webinar. But with that, this will be the 13th EMEA AgTech Exchange, and I'd like to stop sharing my screen for just a moment, and then I'm going to pass it over to Taita to introduce himself and begin sharing his screen with the remainder of the slides.
Hi everyone, my name is Taita and I'm the founder at Synnefa. Thank you so much, Casey, and I will move straight to the presentation and share my screen and hopefully get engaging. I hope everyone can see my screen. And
yes, we can see your screen, and you're currently in the slides, and probably just want to start the full show.
Yeah. Great. All right. So I'm happy today to present to you Synnefa. Synnefa is a smart farming solutions company providing holistic hardware and software to enable farmers to increase yield and productivity while reducing risk. We use these solutions primarily to generate data that we pass on to partners such as financial institutions, agro dealers, as well as even agro insurance companies, in order to effectively reach, underwrite, and even serve middle income farmers, export cooperatives, and smallholder farmers in Kenya. So a little bit about the team that we work with here at Synnefa. We started the company back in 2014. We were students at the University of Nairobi. I started thinking of ways of supplementing my pocket money. I was really not comfortable having to call back home to ask for money. So since I was born and raised in a farm in Kericho and we grew tea and maize, it was kind of natural for me to think about agriculture. So I planted tomatoes, and long story short, it didn't work really well because I couldn't mitigate a lot of the risks. My crops were exposed to the environment. I didn't have the knowledge needed to grow optimally. And so I started thinking about ways to optimize growing crops in protected environments. So I spoke to Paul. Paul was working at Brick. He was building rugged IoT devices and internet devices. And together we came together and we started Synnefa. And then for the past 3 years, we've been building the technology, integrating it to our solution, and then brought in Shalom as well to help us grow into the business. She worked for KCB Bank initially. And as we get along, we'll get to see the products that we offer our farmers. But this is the team that we work with here based in Nairobi. And we now work with a team of 17 people spread across Kenya, as well as our partner countries or nearby countries in Uganda and Tanzania. A little bit of what's happening in the content continent, climate change is here. Smallholder farmers are the most vulnerable, and you have a huge smartphone and internet penetration happening across sub-Saharan Africa. At the same time, COVID has really accelerated demand for mobile loans. Up to over $400 million was just disbursed in June 2020 by mobile loan providers. The problem that we seek to address is unpredictable weather patterns and harvesting cycles, which results in farmers having really small or inconsistent incomes. At the same time, farmers have inadequate access to modern farming equipment. They're used to outdated farming technologies. And of course, this affects their ability to have high productivity. At the same time, farmers, I know most of us, since being in ag, we know that farmers also lack access to knowledge and farming best practices. And the list goes on and on to lack of access to markets, expensive capital, and I won't dwell much on that problem. But these challenges that these farmers face impact financial institutions, especially on the ability to serve the farmers. They struggle with very thin and very thin file credit histories. They can't really determine if these farmers are credit worthy unless they have a financial footprint. It's very difficult for them to assess risk because crops and weather patterns are unpredictable, harvesting cycles are unpredictable, yields are very unpredictable. At the same time, it's really expensive for them to acquire customers because generally the agricultural ecosystem is fragmented, and that creates a huge credit gap in Africa, approximated at over $100 billion. The solution we provide is proprietary hardware and software solutions that enables farmers to grow high-value crops, increase yield, and reduce risk. Now, we do this by combining both physical products, greenhouses, farming equipment that we set up at the farm, and then we optimize the greenhouses by installing Internet of Things sensors we call Farm Shield, and these are installed in the soil. And this allows us to track what's the soil moisture and optimize irrigation as well as fertilizer application, and generate data that we push to the cloud to a mini farm ERP we call Farm Cloud. And this is accessible to farmers either through mobile, laptop, or even a USSD platform. At the same time, we just don't dispatch or release technology to farmers without providing support. So we provide farming advisory on a bi-weekly basis to all our customers. And it goes on until when a customer is quite confident about the product and solution that they're using. To break it down much better, greenhouses, what we do there is we provide two options, metallic and wooden greenhouses, and all of them come equipped with drip irrigation kits. This allows them to grow high-value crops in protected environments and reduces inconsistencies while increasing income by up to 4 times. Farm Shield, which is the Internet of Things hardware device that we have, is solar powered, which means we can deploy anywhere on the farm or anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa, has got artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities. So based on the data it collects from the soil, it optimizes irrigation. At the same time, we have a satellite option. So for farms that are not connected to the internet, we just are about to launch a satellite option that allows about 95%, if not 99% coverage across Africa. And what we do is we collect data both on irrigation and production on the soil, and then we link it up to a farm mini ERP. The farmers use Farm Cloud to keep daily work records, and this is where we collect what we call agronomy data, and we'll see that later on in the presentation. It allows them to automatically track production data, bring in crop traceability, because you can see what actions or activities were done from the beginning to harvesting. It allows them to access 24/7 access to farm inputs. So they can actually place orders for their farm fertilizer, seeds, or agrochemicals through the platform. And also it generates what we call a digital farmer experience score. Think of it as the credit reference score or the CRV score that financial institutions use. We also have a production score that determines how experienced the farmer is. And that is some of the data that we share with our banking partners. On the farmer advisory side, we provide agronomists who train and educate farmers on good agricultural practices. The agronomists are very critical because they provide physical presence of our products. They also visit our farmers every 2 weeks and they fulfill the orders that they've placed on the platform as well. and they're able to use the insights generated from FarmCloud and FarmShield to train and optimize irrigation for farmers. Well, our customer segmentation is quite broad. We have about 60% of our customers are mainly middle-income telephone farmers, and we have farmer cooperatives, about 35%, and exporters. And then we have large ag companies that are selling inputs directly to farmers, who form 12%. And we also work with research centers and NGOs that form about 3% of our customer segmentation. Telephone farmers or middle-income farmers, we define them as having an average annual income of between $5,000 to $100,000. They predominantly grow high-value crops such as tomatoes, capsicums, and also export crops such as strawberries, chilies, and avocados. They typically pay cash and are located around urban centers in Kenya, across East Africa and West Africa. They're really tech savvy and want to farm smart because they do not have the time to manage. These are people that have 8 to 5 jobs, or they are based in the city and have their family back in rural Kenya or in the rural farm. And we typically find them through social media or Google search ads. For farmer cooperatives and export enterprises, we define them as having about $50,000 to $1 million in revenue. They work directly with smallholder farmers who supply them with crops for export. And they have a very huge need to be export compliant, global gap compliant. And we provide, and they have multiple farms that they must provide support for using minimal or very few agronomists. They usually prefer subscription charge instead of a huge upfront capital charge. So we work with them to provide more like a subscription model or as a service. And they are really keen on crop traceability. We usually find these partners through LinkedIn referrals and networking events such as today. For large ag input companies, they really, we onboard them onto our platform. Farmers can be able to see the products that they offer. We also work with agro dealers in the village level so that whenever a farmer places an order on the platform, we're able to fulfill that order through the platform. And we also work with local agro dealers to retail or resell our FarmShield device at the farm level with a 20% commission for each unit sold. And we typically work with them or find them through farmer expos, walk-in visits, and agro dealer conference events. Our business model is pretty simple. We have a B2C model to middle income and telephone farmers where we sell the equipment and IoT sensors directly, and with a 50% gross margin, while we integrate that device with a software service, and it's free for one farm and one user. Beyond that, the farmers have to upgrade and move into a premium subscription, which is $25 a month and up to 5 users. At the same time, we have a B2B2C model, which is we work with farmer cooperatives and ag export organizations where we provide free IoT sensors. We don't charge for the devices. We install them at no cost, and we give them access to the data on the ERP, but we have a monthly subscription cost of $250 for every 100 smallholder farmers that we provide the solution for, or depending on the acreage that you want the device to cover. And then lastly, we have a B2B model as well. This is working with ag input companies and agro dealers where we take a commission off any commodity that's purchased through the platform. So for any fertilizer or seeds or biologicals or agrochemical ordered, we then take a percentage of that and we fulfill the order through our agronomists. At the same time, we share the production data with ag finance partners who are able to provide, to view the production data and provide credit scoring and financing for farmers on our platform. So what makes us different? We are a turnkey solution company where we provide an after-sales agronomic support from planting all the way to harvesting. And we do this through the FarmCloud platform and our agronomists. We also provide full remote management of farms, which allows farmers to focus on other income generating activities. We also provide the smart irrigation system sensors, which we call FarmShield, and this increases irrigation and fertilizer efficiency and productivity by up to 40%. We also offer financing of our products through our banking partners. So we don't directly do the financing. We work with local banks and microfinance institutions, as well as we provide crop insurance against any acts of God or uncontrollable pests and diseases at the farm level. So we're pretty much covering all the needs that we are seeing our customers have at the farm level. How the financing works is that the farmer typically pays a 30% deposit, and then the 70% is financed by the bank. We then install the smart greenhouses and transplant the crop for farmers. Once we do the transplanting, we do bi-weekly agronomic support and sending of monthly updates to the bank via the online dashboard. And then we have monthly harvest of the crops by the farmer, being channeled to the bank and being able for them to repay the loan. Once the loan is closed, the bank has the data to provide a secondary loan based on the production and payment history. How we work with farmers is step one, they call us, so they visit our office, and then we send an agronomist to visit the farm and collect soil samples. And we also measure and ensure that the greenhouse that they need fits their farm. Step three, if they can afford, they pay for the greenhouse. If they cannot afford, we link them directly to a Rafiki bank or family bank that we work with, and then they get a financing option. Once they have the crops planted, we then trigger the insurance to cover the crops and provide the bi-weekly crop support. And then once they start harvesting, we track that data all the way and share it with the partners along the value chain. The most important thing I think about today's discussion would be what data points are we collecting from our farmers? And we have two data points. One is on the sensory and agronomy. So FarmShield collects sensor data points, which are measured by digital sensors located or pushed into the soil. And then we combine that with agronomy data in order to have more like a 360 view of what's happening to the farm from end to end. Some of the data points we collect through internet or satellite internet are things like how much water they've irrigated, and we are able to look at how far back how much of water they've used. And also the installation for the FarmShield is pretty much simple. It's a simple ruggedized plug and play, which any local farmer or local plumber can do. So these data points trigger actions of the farm. So based on the soil moisture sensor, the system triggers irrigation. Based on the temperature on the farm or on the greenhouse, the sensor sends alerts that allows farmers to control ventilation. Also, if there's pests and diseases based on weather and irrigation data, we can be able to trigger alerts to the farmer. In terms of agronomy data, which is collected through the daily record keeping, farmers are able to access FarmCloud either through a mobile phone, through internet, or through a USSD feature phone. But 47% of our farmers actually currently use a smartphone to access FarmCloud. And all daily records entered on the platform are stored and reviewed by in-house agronomists who score those actions and as good, fair, or bad. And that scoring is what generally gives a farmer what we call a production score. And this ensures we support farmers, especially the ones who practice good agricultural practices. The insights we obtain from agronomy data points is one is complete crop traceability. So we can see all the way from when they planted to when they harvested and even when they close the production. And it allows us to pull traceability reports that they can share with their buyers or aggregators. We can also see pest and diseases alerts based on ground-based reporting. If farmers in a certain region have reported pests and diseases, we can easily see if it's around the same region or different areas. Also, it creates a farming experience or a farmer experience score, which we are able to share with financing partners to supplement their credit scoring. Our pricing is that we charge per square meter for our greenhouses, given we have two options. We have metallic greenhouses at $28 per square meter, and we have wooden greenhouses at $18 per square meter. We also have FarmShield, which is the IoT device or the Internet of Things device. And we have 4 packages. Each of them is based on how many sensors the farmer wants on their farm. The simplest or the most basic package we call the Lite is $500, and it goes all the way to a Pro, which has NPK, CO2, light intensity sensor for $1,500. The FarmShield is integrated to the FarmCloud and it's totally free. You can also purchase the FarmCloud independently of the FarmShield. So we do have customers that say, I just want the FarmCloud to onboard my 1,000 farmers who produce for me chilies. And so we don't in that case, integrate with the Farm Shield. So in such a case, we then go for an enterprise contract where we agree how many farmers on the platform. But for individual farmers, we give them free for one farm, one user. Beyond that, we charge $10 per month for 3 farms and 3 users, and $25 for 5 farms and 10 users. And then we have the farm advisory or the agronomic support that we provide farmers. And this we charge $25 per visit. Some of the projects that we've done or currently ongoing is one we call Catalyzing Farm Shield Pro Adoption, and we are working with the US African Development Foundation. The goal here is to create multiple sites that farmers can view the technology and integrate, at the same time collect data that we can analyze and provide more meaningful value to farmers. We also work with, for example, APA Insurance, which is an insurance company based in Kenya. Their main interest has been how can we leverage on ag data coming from the farm and build better ag insurance products. Also reduce on loss assessment, because now you have insights all through the value chain. We also work with Juhudi Kilimo, who are also leveraging on the data in terms of agricultural loans. How can smart greenhouses, or how can smart greenhouse financing be based on sensor data? Is it possible to lend without having to use the traditional means of credit scoring and just use sensor data and agronomy data? We also work with schools and NGOs, and one of the interesting projects that we just completed is called Smart Farming for Schools, where we build smart greenhouses for teenage girls. The goal here is women empowerment, and this was done with our client Cooperative Bank. This has been really instrumental in enabling women in the villages to be able to adopt modern farming technologies. Another interesting research that we're doing is with the CPE, where they are looking at IoT sensors be used for black soldier fly farming, yes, and that is ongoing. And the data being collected from the farms with BSF is streamed to CPE, and CPE are able to use that data to enrich their research. And same to CALRO as well. CALRO is the local Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization. We work with them on a potato propagation site, collecting data on what's happening in terms of potato production and enriching their research as they build high quality seeds. We've worked across the region in Africa. We are predominantly in Kenya. Most of our units or greenhouses or products have gone to Uganda, Tanzania, and Somaliland. But we've also started moving to Ghana. We have done some installations in Ghana, and also looking at the West African markets as we move forward. Our partners that we work with, some of them are the Founders Factory Africa, Water and Energy for Food, CTA previously. There have been some great partners, and Innovate UK, that we've been working together to catalyze the technology adoption. Well, our traction so far is that we've built over 2,000 greenhouses across Sub-Saharan Africa, directly impacting over 10,200 farmers. And we've seen revenues currently at about $200, $197 average income per farmer with the Farm Shield, because of the efficiency of irrigation and also a reduction on costs based on optimized farm input application. Well, we're here today because we want to work with you. Our ask is that we want to share the data that we collect on the farm with partners that can add value to the farmers. For us, we are very clear that the more value we can generate on the data that we collect from these farms, the more farmers would want to work with us and would also like to have their farm digitized. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Taita. That was a great presentation. And I think I know there's a lot of information there for some questions. I'm gonna open it up to anybody who wants to raise their hand using the raise your hand function down on the reactions, and we can let you come off mute and ask your question if you have it. Otherwise, if you're more comfortable, type it in the chat. But it looks like Rebecca is the first person. Rebecca, please.
Thanks, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for the great presentation. I'm always so excited to hear about these kinds of innovations. And I actually had to step away for a moment, so I may have missed it. So forgive me if this question is repetitive. But I'm a little bit curious. there's a sort of a cautionary piece around having all this data about farmers and sort of information security and how to make sure that the data is kept, aligned with what, national policies might be developing. I know that there's a little bit of a lag there. It's something that we talk about here. I'm based here in the US, and it's discussed, kind of your information and how that's used for, as you said, you have a lot of data that's important for the, for this ag tech space to continue to grow, and we become smarter with that, with how we can program things and act on things swiftly and all that. Let me take pause and see if you're following me. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. See, it's on the question of data. I think one of the things that we insist on is that the data belongs to the farmer. That's the first thing. And the step we've taken is that we provide a tiered consensus approach on data. So the farmer has to consent to share that data with us. And this is triggered at the dashboard level. So we have two tiers. Tier one is if the farmer consents to sharing data, then we can provide more targeted recommendations. And then we have the second tier is that if the farmer consents us to share that data with third parties who are not us, then they can be able to access finance and other relevant deals such as ag inputs and all of that. But at the moment, we've not we secure that data on AWS and we use MQTT, which is like a secure channel collecting all that data onto secured servers. We're also compliant to ISO standards in terms of data collection and preservation, and also deletion if a farmer wants to delete their data. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, thanks. And I see that I missed that slide there. Is the legal and regulatory sort of framework in Kenya aligned with this? Are there, if I were a farmer and I felt like there was some issue with my data, is there sort of systems and processes in place at this time or developing perhaps?
We do have a data protection act or law that was passed 1 or 2 years ago. So yes, it's a developing space. Of course, the Data Protection Act is a little bit biased towards personal data. But as we move along, I think there's a general movement into now any data that is collected across any platform or sector or industry has to comply with the data protection law as well.
Great, thanks. And sorry that I missed this slide. That would have answered.
No, it wasn't there. It was just, it's on the appendix. It's a question that we do get. So I place it towards the end.
Ah, very good. Okay, thanks. And congratulations on the great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, consent. The data privacy question is always one that comes up. It's a good one to have. That was a very strong answer. Does anyone else have a question that they would like to come off mute, raise their hand and ask Taita at this time? I have a list, so I'll be happy to get to mine, but I want to make sure that I give everybody else at least a chance to ask any burning questions. Okay, well, I'll just I'll take the next one and start at sort of the top. And one of the things you mentioned, you talked about the mini ERP, Taita, and you talked about, I think, the ability of a farmer to this is sort of a turnkey suite or bundle of products that a farmer can engage with. But you also talked about agronomy services, advisory services. I wonder if you could characterize at the startup phase for the farmer or the co-op, from your experience, what does it really take to get this greenhouse and sort of the IoT with the sensors up and running, and then the use of the dashboard as well included in that? So what does it really take to kind of get the farmer comfortable and ready to engage in that in a way that really puts meaningful data in so that you get meaningful data out?
Great question. What we've seen is that first of all, we can't separate the software component from the hardware and the physical presence of the agronomist. We've tried that and it doesn't work. Farmers have a certain trust behavior that they have to trust the person, which is typically the agronomists and their local agro dealer network. And so we leverage on that behavior. So the agronomist is the person that is in charge of training the farmer on how to use the technology and how to gain insights on the technology. And what we've seen typically over the years is that once the farmer gets comfortable with the technology, then they can start using it by themselves. But it's very dependent on the customer segment. So for the middle income farmers and the telephone farmers, they can do that within 3 months, 6 months of using the technology. But for the smallholder farmers and the farmer cooperatives, we've realized that it has to be an ongoing discussion because, again, farm inputs are changing, seed varieties are changing, and all this other inputs to the value chain, as they change, we have to keep on updating the software, keep on updating the support. So I tend to believe it's going to be an ongoing process. I don't see a part where we can delink agronomists with farmers until when farmers get to a point where they actually are quite conversant with the technology.
Yeah, no, it's a great characterization. I think the way we speak about this at AMEA and even within my work at Nubru International is an element of ongoing coaching in the introduction of this type of technology into an area or with a group, a cooperative business, or a segment of farmers who have not had that experience of engaging with essentially utilizing a dashboard like this or the sensor tools and the information going in and coming out. So having that ability to answer their questions and be present in this sort of blended learning hybrid environment is something we've talked a lot about on these webinars, is also in the working group at AMEA. And so it's great to have your input into how a bundle of products and services that Synnefa provides also sort of in reaching that next level of farmer below those telephone farmers, as you described them, requires that level of engagement. And then that kind of brings me to a likely follow-up question, which is sort of, you started to touch on this with partnerships and projects. But what does an ideal partner look like to provide that, to reach, let's say, that next level of even lower income, that segment you haven't reached yet, let's say, the more marginalized and vulnerable groups of farmers who maybe are part of a digital divide that exists in every country in this case, people who don't have as high-speed internet access all the time, or who don't have smartphone access and penetration, even at the 47% level that you noted from your customers. What's the ideal partner to help you reach those types of farmers? I'm just curious, both for my own work, but I think something that would be relevant to the AMEA audience too.
Yeah, that's a good question. We initially thought it was going to be input companies, but it turns out it's not. It turns out that it's the crop buyers. The people who are going to buy the crop are the ones who they have a lot of control or power on the value chain. And because that's where the money flows from into the farm once they start harvesting, they really influence a lot on that value chain. And that's what unlocks scale for us, is finding a buyer that can buy either multiple crops or even one single crop, but in multiple areas. Then we can optimize the production value chain towards that buyer. And I think that's something that is not really fully mature here in Kenya. I think some companies are trying it and they're making some progress, but it's really fragmented because you have a farmer who has to sell to 7 different people the same crop, and it's different pricing at any one point, and it's so unpredictable when they're going to buy. So as the question we get asked a lot is, yes, I'm optimizing, yes, I'm producing better, I'm saving, but who's going to buy my input, or who's going to buy my produce? So we've had to have those difficult conversations with partners that can buy, and that's why you see us starting with export farms, because there's a clear market buyer there. But I think to unlock scale to smallholder farmers, we need to get some aggregator who's able to buy from multiple farms.
No, that's an interesting response. I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. The cash flow needs to be there, and then the demand needs to be there for the investment in the optimization to be a fruitful opportunity or have a good return on investment for the farmer as well as for the cooperative, if that's the customer we're speaking about at that moment in time. That makes a lot of sense. I think if I'll pause, but I have one other follow-up question or a few, and I can keep going. But I'm curious about the ROI numbers that you shared, both for the individual farmer at $197, and sort of maybe unpacking that a bit more for the audience and myself included. And then you also have a really cool feature, I think that's really important to engaging with your website, which is the price calculator that you have there. And I encourage everyone to take a quick look at that. I think it's a great tool just to get people like oriented with, okay, what's the gross margin I can get from an investment in this in terms of into this suite or bundle of tools. And so I wonder if you could just elaborate a little bit more on that and how you intend for that to be used specifically when people land on your site.
Yeah, thanks. A very good question. So we realized that the existing solutions were forcing farmers into certain boxes. You're either taking this size or not. And most of the time, farmers don't have those huge budgets. Someone wants something within their budget, which is something we always had to deal with. I'm not within budget, it's outside my budget. So we customize our solution based on, okay, what does it cost us to set this up per square meter, right? And how much would it cost us to deliver this anywhere across the country? And based on that minimum, then we say, okay, if I needed today 10 square meters of a greenhouse, it's not that big, but that's what I want. What would be the cost per square meter? And that's the formula that we've given to our farmers. So depending on the square meters that they want to cover, it could be as small as 10 square meters all the way to whichever, 1,000, 10,000. Then they just plug in that value and it gives them an approximate. Now, how we work out the return on investment is we took data from several farms that we operated and we asked and we took the average. So what's the yield for this crop across the region in Kenya? So we're not even segmenting it based on region. And we had an average number that we used, and then we looked at what's the average price of the crop, combine that to have an average projection per square meter. So if I have 10 square meters of a greenhouse, it's going to cost me, say, $28 per square meter to install, which is a total of $280. But the production per square meter per season in 9 months is about $6 if you were doing tomatoes, right? So that would give you $60. Now, I need to be honest that there is a point where the size of the greenhouse loses economies of scale. So if you go below a certain square meter, typically 100 square meters, then it's going to take you longer to recoup that investment. And I think we're very honest with farmers on that front, but it has allowed farmers to be able to get a sense of what's my profitability going to look like.
No, that's great. There's a lot of questions in there too, as you're talking about, I just appreciate the frankness with the assumptions that are being made in that calculator too, when you're looking at average yields across regions. And, we can get into a long conversation about the variety of different yields that you'll get depending on the subregion, the soil type, and every other, agronomic aspect that's vital to that success. But no, super interesting. And if, the next logical question is sort of, is there any more information you have publicly available on that in terms of developing that price calculator, or things you'd be willing to share publicly that sort of explain that, maybe looking, or partnerships where it's not something you're going to share, but you might have some impact data from some of your partnerships in an impact report, or not even necessarily something as like an RCT, but certainly like a randomized control trial, but certainly something more simple like an impact report from a partnership with a series of farmers and a test study with a comparison, something like that on the M&E and learning side. If you have anything that you're thinking about that maybe I didn't see on the website or that you wanted to share, it'd be great to know about, or some ideas you might have where partners here could also help to encourage fundraising in an effort to support something like that, right? So there's sort of that synergy that exists with this group of people and the member organizations represented at AMEA that would be curious, and that I know I'm curious about it, and wonder what you think about it too.
Yes, it's something that we're very happy to do. We've been trying to do an impact case study on how is IoT really impacting farmers. And that's ongoing. And I think once we have that impact report, we'd be happy to share it with the community here so that they can get insights. I know that we've been speaking also to other research organizations across the world that have been tapping into our data. For example, GSMA, I think, would be releasing a report where they've featured Synnefa, and we've shared a lot of data with them. Hopefully we can share also with the group here and the consortium to get some insights there.
No, that's excellent. I'm glad to hear that you're already collaborating with GSMA. That's fantastic to know. That's really exciting. I haven't fully exhausted my questions. I want to respect time. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to raise your hand and ask them. I'll pause to give some space for that. You're still formulating one or two or any follow-ups to the discussion. Felipe, you have your hand raised. Please feel free.
Yes, it's indeed a follow-up to one of the questions Red asked. Is just you mentioned that there is a return on investment and it's well explained to the farmers. But I'm also just wondering if Red have some figures to shed some light into how long it takes a farmer to repay the finance they access and also to start seeing profits.
Yeah, averagely now for say 100 square meter, it's taking farmers about 1.5 to 2 years to repay that back. Of course, if you go higher than that, if the middle income farmers do about 500 square meters per in greenhouse and they break even by year 1. But for the smaller farmers, it takes them about 1.5 or 2 years to repay back.
Yeah, that would be excellent information too to know by segment and from your experiences, even without the study per se, but just sort of laying out in some case studies, just qualitatively with some, maybe a backstory of a specific example of a cooperative that's willing to consent, what it took for them to do that, and what their profile is as a business. I know that would be extremely useful for our organization and for AMEA to better understand, what that took for that cooperative business, especially with the farm organization being sort of the professionalization of the farm organization being the shared mission of AMEA members, understanding what that ROI took, understanding the story of that co-op. Where were they when they took the loan? Where were they after they took the loan? Even just that type of learning, without the quantitative analysis or the more detailed longitudinal study built into it or something like that would be a very interesting way to characterize some of those. If you have those examples, that'd be great. But if not, that's always something we'd be interested in. I know members would be and collaborating on, but there's also the obvious tension of you have to run a business. So creating that extra work is always, I'm sure finding the time is very difficult.
No, I can, we have this data with us. As I say,
Cool.
These questions do come up and I'm happy that you're asking them. It's just packaging them in a way that the cooperative is comfortable with us sharing that data and then sharing it with you as well. So it shouldn't be an issue unless it has to be something that we don't have, but based on what you've asked, I think it's something that we do have.
Yeah, that would be wonderful information to share with AMEA members after this webinar as a follow-up. I have one last question. Does anyone else have anything? I think, and then we'll end close to the hour. But you were speaking about modularity, specifically of the suite and the bundle of services and hardware that you provide. I was curious, again, just maybe you could maybe explain it a second. I know you went through it a bit during the presentation, but sort of the extent to which that modularity is still maintains impact, like you said, return on investment. Like, what's the most important thing for? I would imagine it's the sensors and the IoT and the IoT and the Internet of Things access and the dashboard. The greenhouse, maybe not, but I don't know. And what have you seen in your business as in terms of how that modularity is being acted upon by your customer base, and what they're really demanding most? And I know you probably, because you have such a strong segmentation, and even the B2B relationships that you have, it's going to be a different answer by segment. But it would be interesting just to hear you sort of characterize the modularity around those segments a little bit more for the audience, because I'm very curious about it.
Yeah, for smallholder farmers, I think the modularity has been on the greenhouse because it's what they understand. and they want to keep on adding block by block or size by size, and they want it simple to integrate. And what we've seen for them is that they do it stage by stage. So they start with the greenhouse, then they come to the IoT, then they integrate with the software, and then eventually now they're fully digitalized all the way down. But for the middle income farmers, it starts with the other way around. It starts with the platform. They want to be able to see that data, then we go to their farm and install that. Now, for the cooperatives, it's again, because they're driven on crop traceability and global gap certification standards, the platform is the most important thing. And they want us to be able to onboard as much farmers as we can on the platform to allow the extension officers do less work and support more people. So you're very right. The answer is different per segment, but that's how it looks like right now.
No, it's intuitive. It makes sense, but it's also just interesting to hear it from your experience, having actually, grown this business from the ground up in such a short period of time. That's excellent. Does anyone else have any other questions for Taita?
I do, and I'm not sure if I missed the answer. Well, Sahid is also wants to ask a question, but Taita, is there any training that comes along with the package of services you're providing? So either on the installation of the greenhouses or in using the software, is there any training, or is that something that you would be looking for in a potential partnership with an AMEA member, for example?
Yeah, so the training is there. We do provide bi-weekly training to the farmers on how to use the technology. What partnerships we have been looking for that side is on training content that goes onto the platform so that farmers can reference. And we've been building or looking for partners to provide that content for different crops that we get farmers growing. But yes, currently we do have agronomists that do that training. And we're also building more like a database of knowledge that farmers can also refer to.
Zahid, did you want to ask your question? I heard you had your hand up a minute ago. I don't know if you.
Yes, I'm actually struggling with the device. Okay, yeah, great presentation, Taita, and I'm quite impressed with what you're doing. Part of my question has actually been answered with the training that you mentioned, because I was very curious. Working with smallholder farmers, especially within the cooperative, they are not tech savvy. So how do you really get them to understand the platform and be able to use the platform? Because I'm assuming that there will be some certain data access available to them for them to manipulate, for them to read information that allows them to make good business decision as a group. And then again, of course, there's still the group dynamics that you may need to deal with working with a group of farmers. So how do you tackle those issues?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And something I need to reinforce is that we do not provide any of our products or services without agronomists to support farmers. It just cannot work. Unless the segment is telephone farmers, they can self run and operate their farms without having that support. But again, they still call us in a month or two to optimize for them. So training is central for us, even for cooperatives. What we do is we assign an agronomist that checks in every 2 weeks, whether or not things are working or not. Even if things are working, we still support the cooperatives in their day-to-day farm operation. So what we've seen and how we do it is that during the first year, when we're introducing the technology, we don't charge for the farmers. It's completely not charged, it's completely free, because we take that as the first learning year, and that allows farmers to access the agronomists at affordable costs. Then from year 2 is when now we start charging a visit fee of $25 per visit based on on the frequency that you want. So if you just want once a month, then that would be $25 a month. But what we've typically seen is that farmers, once we do one season, providing the support, because all that training is on the platform, they can easily reference if they wanted to check, okay, what did I do last season at this stage? So year 2 for us has actually been to kind of optimize or give adjustments or recommendations based on something new or new trend or new change in the ag space. But the training season is for 1 year, and we do it across all our products, across all our customers as well.
No, yeah, thanks for that response. Another question came through in the chat, and I wanted from Fatima, but I wanted to also sort of tie Saeed's question together with Fatima's question, because I think part of what we're getting at, and you mentioned it earlier, is the extensive fragmentation that exists in this other segment that you're not reaching, right? And that's a huge segment of millions of farmers, right? And that's for you, that's also a great opportunity to continue to make money as a business and achieve a social mission as part of your business mission, right? And so there's benefit, there's dual benefit there. I know you see that, we've talked about it, this group understands that very well too. I think that's the question we're getting at around partnerships also, is not just who is the ideal value chain partner, because they're going to have a lot of the time that off-taker is going to have the same problem of providing the fundamental capacities or skills necessary to engage with, especially the dashboard, especially the digital tools. I'm having that digital literacy at that level, or the computer skills essentially, to be able to engage with it meaningfully. And then wondering, and I think this is not something you're necessarily, or maybe we're going to be able to answer with 4 minutes, because I think it's a bigger conversation, but we'd love to continue that conversation with you and continue to share learnings, because I think one of those big gaps is, providing that on-demand training, and sometimes it's going to be more than a year, especially for that segment, right? And how does that fit?
Yeah.
How does that, is there a what's the business model that fits there? Is it really a model where they can pay $25 a year, or is it a model where we subsidize with other funding from donors or, philanthropy or other places? And how do you see that matching with what you're providing in terms of really the agronomy analytics that a farmer needs to make decisions, which is a huge opportunity for them to improve more rapidly and adapt more quickly, especially with climate change, as you noted at the outset. The ability to control your irrigation and measure your soil moisture and be able to, whatever other data points you're pulling in, because this is sort of the other question. We didn't have time today, but would love to see your dashboard. And I have that demo video. I'm sure you have that available. If there's a link, we can watch that on our own time so we can follow up. But I'm going to let you finish and respond to anything you wanted to what I just said. But the other thing is there will be a survey, as we mentioned, after this webinar. So everyone who's on here, if you still have questions for Taita, you can ask them in the survey anonymously, and he can get back to you with those responses and any other associated hyperlinks or documents and resources that help to answer those questions. But Taita, I want to pass it to you for any last words before we run out of time.
Yeah, a very good question. And to be honest, you've actually said it. It's quite expensive to send agronomists to the farmers to keep on training them for a long period, depending on whichever time you look at. And we do that because, as we all know, it's fragmented. We have no option but to do it. But the way we look at it is that if we can train village champions, what we call village champions, or experienced farmers, and really spend a lot of time and capital training, say, one village champion in a region, or 2 or 3 or 4, we strongly feel that they can influence and be trainers of farmers in that area. And in the long run, the model becomes sustainable. And we've tried it out where we go to an area, we look for someone who is known as the best farmer and has the most organized farm. We provide a demo kit. We spend a lot of time training him and the family and the neighbors. And then what we typically see is that this farmers still have a wait and see thing where, okay, let's see how he does it, right? And then year 2, that's the wait and see. And then year 3, that's when the adoption comes in. And so I mean, grants help us to subsidize that initial stage of setting up the demos and giving us time. But I think also we've started having conversations with investors that if you can provide patient capital to ag businesses, we are not grant reliant. It's because they're the only patient investors that we do have. But if you can give me investment that is patient for 2 or 3 years, then I can build the pipeline and demo distribution channel that I do, and then we can start monetizing by year 4 and 5. But as you've said, we always have all these questions, and
I think this is where we can. Yeah, this is where I think the benefits of talking with a group like AMEA can be really valuable, and I do hope, and I want to continue this conversation because I think this point especially is vital, because even within the work that many of us, our organizations are doing, and even within the AMEA network itself, there's this, the question around how to build business development services or BDS services to farmers, especially to cooperatives and businesses, SMEs, that don't require a subsidy, but have that patient capital built in, and also that have the assurances on the financing side to that agribusiness that they're going to be able to meet their financial agreements or arrangements in terms of being bankable businesses. And so we have internal discussions on that and criteria. There's a whole working group at AMEA that discusses that point. But this is where the ideas of technology, the limitation, the kind of challenges that you're seeing as a business, the challenges we see as implementers of capacity development programs across sub-Saharan Africa and many other parts of the world, have an opportunity to continue this discussion and sort of identify those pain points and see where actually we have opportunities to work together in a way that can help us at least make sure there are assurances on both sides of that equation or that ledger, and then find ways to bridge the gap, right? And connect those farmers who are unbanked or those farmers who are not benefiting from bundled digital solutions and hardware solutions like you're providing, and how to connect them to that in a way that's meaningful and sustainable. And there's a big gap there. And that's I think the whole justification for this conversation, right? But I really appreciate your candor and just willingness to have this conversation today. It was really great. I learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the great questions. And hopefully, I hope to keep on coming in for more sessions with Mayor. Really, really exciting stuff.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Taita. And thanks everybody else.